Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Massive Late Fees. Everybody Lies, our House MD podcast. My name is Mark. With me, as always, is my co-host Mike. How you doing, Mike?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
Good. We've had a good time here so far at Massive Late Fee and the network and all that stuff. It's been good. This I always hate the preamble to this. I never know what to say. But this episode of House is entitled DNR.
DNR.
Yeah, that's what it is. DNR. Um, and it's an interesting episode to me. Um, I think who do you think this guy is supposed to be? John Henry Giles.
Bradford Marcellus.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, he's probably the most famous, modern jazz musician.
Yeah,
Or
that's
Winston
my guess.
Marcellus, one of them. I think they both play horn instruments, but I think this guy plays a trumpet.
Correct.
What's weird is there's a cameo, and I had to double check. At the very beginning of this episode, Brandy's in it for 5 minutes.
Oh, is that Brandy? That is Brandy, yeah.
Yep, yeah, it is. Yeah,
Oh, that's crazy.
yeah. This episode starts like the preamble, where we find out who's sick. There's some young musicians, like they're at a recording studio, and then this legendary guy John Henry that they're really shocked is showing up. Shows up there, and he starts to play some music for them. Then all of a sudden his lungs seem to get really tight, and he starts collapsing and seems to have difficulty breathing.
Yep. Yeah, he starts having difficulty breathing, and then he basically says to his, I don't know if she's a handler or, I mean, basically like his assistant. But he's like,
So
I
I
can't
thought they had a
breathe.
romantic connection. The blonde lady.
It seemed like there might have been something there, but he does later in the episode kind of say, like, no, nobody to come home to and stuff like that. So if they
Yeah,
do, I think it's more casual.
sure.
But yeah, so he says he can't breathe, and then we go to the theme music and everything, and next we hear we're in the ER, and House completely out of character. He goes up to Cuddy and says that he wants the case because he's, and this is the first time that we kind of see House's love of music. This will come up later, but he's he loves medicine. Obviously, he also loves music a lot.
And Vicodin.
Yeah, Vicodin, that's true. But yeah, so he wants the case, and we find out that Foreman's old mentor is John Henry Giles' primary care physician, and he
Yeah,
has,
Marty Hamilton, I believe is the name.
yeah, he is basically asked Foreman if he can treat the pneumonia because they have a relationship, and he's asking him basically as a
He's a
favor.
former mentor of Foreman,
Yeah.
and he's very adamant that he not be treated or tested for anything other than ALS because he's taken a long time to come to the diagnosis, and he doesn't want. And it's such a fragile kind of diagnosis, according to both I think
Mhm.
House and Foreman. Like from what I'm not very familiar with it, in real life, but they seem to sound like it can almost is difficult to even detect. I'm not really, like I said, not very familiar with it.
Yeah, it's so it's a diagnosis of exclusion, as they say on the show. Basically, there are not many definitive tests for ALS. It's just kind of when you see the
A cluster of
symptoms,
symptoms.
yeah, and they you rule a bunch of other stuff out. That's kind of how you determine somebody has it.
Yeah, and House, for some reason, just immediately decides that this guy doesn't have ALS.
Well, House doesn't like it, and we'll find this out later too. House doesn't like diagnoses of exclusion. He wants definitive proof that it is whatever it is. ALS is never the answer to any of the diseases that anyone has throughout the course of the entire show. Um, but
And
he,
also, he has famous line is it's not lupus. You know, that's
hmm
another like like you said,
yep,
disease of exclusion. So yeah,
yep,
that makes sense.
yeah, exactly. And he like he said, basically he's saying, hey, this guy, says he's ruled everything out. We haven't though. I want to see, and we also kind of get, so there's a few things going on here. There's obviously an ego thing between House and this other doctor. House wants to believe that he's the best out there, the best of the best, and anytime somebody kind of challenges that, he's definitely spoiling for a fight. And he
Yeah,
also, there is like caring about humanity of him in this, because with his mind and everything, if he really hated people as much as he says he hates people, he could have gone into research or something like that and not had to deal with people at all. But there's a couple lines in here where it makes it clear. He's like, this guy, because he says it's a death sentence, ALS. And Foreman, almost like House, responds with, that doesn't mean it's wrong. But House just can't accept that. House is like, I'm not giving up on this person's life.
right. And also the fact that he is a great musician, which we see House listening to some of his albums later.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think that affects House's opinion because I think in a selfish way, House also wants him to be able to make more music so he can
Yep.
listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
But yeah, Foreman, kind of, they go with the ALS thing, and then also I forget the name of the actor who plays John Henry, but he was in the Matrix movies in the second and third one. He was one of the other captains, the one who was competing with Morpheus for the affections of his wife.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'll
He's
think of
been
it
I
in a
guess he's been in
second.
a lot of other stuff, but yeah, that's who played the John Henry. I like him; he's a good actor.
The I remember the woman that played his wife, or not his wife, but the female. I think Cora is her name or something. She was famously in Ghostbusters too.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, she's the one that she's like, I think it's whatever, but I can't be sure about that. Like, I don't know. Plays a weirdo in Ghostbusters too.
Oh,
Or Harry Lennox. That's his name, Harry
okay,
Lennox.
there you go. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he tells Foreman, he's like, I want to do not resuscitate. I don't want to, I don't want to live with my life. Like I want to be able to sign this order while I still can because
hmm
if I'm doomed to die from this, then just I don't want to be resuscitated.
Yep. Exactly. So, House says to Foreman, he basically plants this idea in his head, saying, hey, I don't think it's this. I can't remember what disease he says that he thinks it is, but he says, if it was me, if it was my case, I would use some IV. I'd put some IVIG in there, which is intravenous immunoglobulin. It's basically like blood, almost like blood doping, honestly, but it's used for different treatments for different things. Um, but anyway, so Foreman kind of, he's like, he scoffs it off, but when he's talking to the nurses, doing the actual treatment and everything, he tells them to put IVIG in. But the IVIG treatment causes John Henry to go into respiratory distress because this can happen a lot. It's called slurry, where it's basically using IVIG. You can be prone to blood clots. You can be prone to the slurry type stuff, which kind of can cause pleural effusions. And that's kind of what's happening because it's not it wasn't the right treatment, and Foreman's like, we did this to him, we're gonna kill him, and basically they're all there, the whole team except for House, and they just kind of sit around, and then House comes in and he's like, what are you guys doing? And Foreman explains what happened, and he's like, well, he's not dead yet, and he's like, tube him. He's like, he's got a DNR, we can't do it. So House goes in and intubates him anyway. Asks for a bag, no one hands him a bag. He grabs one, and basically saves his life, stabilizes his stats, and I think that this scene's really interesting because everyone's there. They could have stopped him. They could have physically stopped him from doing this. Foreman is the closest to him of anyone, and he easily could have physically stopped him, but none of them do. And I think it's because they kind of agree with it, even though they don't want to agree with it. They're kind of like, yeah, he shouldn't just have to die because we did this to him.
Right. Yeah, because like you said, it's not. I mean, I think doesn't that prove that it's not ALS when that happened?
Well, I mean, it can certainly indicate that it's not ALS when he has that response, but it's not definitive for sure.
Right.
But yeah, so they put him on the tube, and then um he gets sued by John Henry Giles because he
For
assaulted
in
him.
charge with battery. Yeah.
Yeah, because he had a DNR and everything. They have to go to court because, well, he decides he wants to go to court because the doctor's coming in, Marty's coming in from California, and they're going to pull the plug, and
Right.
John Henry's gonna die. So House is like,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to fight this.
Yeah. Actually, before this, we have to mention the patient in the clinic this,
Oh yes,
which
yes,
was very brief with no follow up, but it was like a guy who was trying to like get Viagra. I guess he didn't know about BlueChew.com.
yeah. Seriously, he should have gotten some Blue Chew.
Yeah, but so he had like a he like basically looked at him and could tell from like physical symptoms that he had diabetes.
Hmm.
And so he's like, well, you might have some kind of heart disease that those pills will kill you for, but you probably want to get checked out for this before that. But he still writes a prescription, which is kind of funny
Yeah,
because he literally just saved somebody from. I think this is after he literally saved the guy from dying, and then this one he goes, hey, if you want to kill yourself, go ahead.
yeah. Basically, yeah, because he says he refers to his penis in the third person and says, he's going on a trip, and me and the little guy, we've got to we got to have
Right.
fun or whatever. And yeah,
This is
House.
another
Yeah, go ahead.
another indication that the quality of a person does matter to him. Like he's
Yeah,
almost in a small way like a Hannibal Lecter type, where like this musician whose music he loves, he's way more interested in keeping him alive than like you said, this kind of like a grown up frat boy, who like you said refers to his penis as the little guy.
yeah. No, that's definitely a good point. He certainly makes judgment calls about people, and that affects how much he wants to save their lives.
Even baby sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, even babies. But yeah, it basically says to the guy, hey, if you have heart disease from your untreated diabetes, then this will probably kill you. So he's basically puts it on him. He's like, hey, you should get your diabetes checked, and maybe you should adjust your insulin or actually get on some insulin. But anyway, so yeah, so the
Yeah, but he
guy,
did this by like he saw like he had like no hair on his fingers and
hmm
like there were some other like subtle physical symptoms that
yep,
he pulled up. And then so that leads us to the courtroom.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That is a good setup for the courtroom. So they're in court, and the argument from the lawyer, which is, I mean, it's kind of an interesting argument, is that John Henry can't be pulled from his life support, or else it would violate his Sixth Amendment right to face his accuser.
Right, even the judge kind of remarks, he's like, oh, that's a good point. And we have to mention that House is an asshole, so he keeps standing up every 5 seconds, to
Hmm.
interrupt or ask a question when, it's completely unnecessary. He just, feels like he deserves special treatment, apparently.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, then
Uh,
but then the defense counsel, actually, I guess would it be the defense? I guess it would actually be the plaintiff in this matter.
yeah.
Yeah, but because it's a civil order, I think they're doing.
Mhm.
It's in like family court or something. So yeah, like he's like, well, there's actually this has been argued that in this particular instance that doesn't apply, so they're going back and forth. And the House just kind of stands up and he goes, I'm gonna hold you in contempt of court again if you do this again. And the House goes, no, no, I just wanted to say, do you have a history of heart disease in your family? Your fingers look like they have some clubbing to them, and that could be a sign. I just want you to get checked out. Please, I'm sorry, interrupt. He's kind of charms the judge a bit.
Hmm.
And like in a really shocking, almost shocking twist, because the guy makes a very good argument, that this isn't allowed to, you can't use this as a defense for this particular reason, but nonetheless, the judge, rules in a house's favor.
Yeah, yeah,
And then we find out that Cuddy has, when she hired House, she set aside an additional 75,000 for legal fees.
yeah. That's hilarious.
So she's not even a little bothered by this. She's like, yeah, we do it.
She's like, "You've so far you've come in under budget."
Right. That was pretty good.
So they get a court order that says he can't be pulled from life support. Marty gets around that pretty easily though, where he's like, "Look, we're gonna pull the plug," and House is like, "You can't. I've got a court order that says I have a right to face my accuser. Judge said so." And he's like, "Well, there's no accuser because all the charges have been dropped against you."
Yeah, I thought that was pretty clever.
So, which
and
kind of
I'm sorry.
shows, that Marty is a little clever like House is too.
Right, another point that was funny was when House initially got the a restraining order of 50 feet.
Oh
He uh,
yes,
he he had Chase, of course. Chase, who else?
right.
Move him to the unit that was right above the clinic
Yeah,
because he said technically it was within 50 feet, so he
in
couldn't
any
do it.
direction.
I just love how much he hates the clinic.
But yeah, so Chase might as well just change his name to House's bitch, because he really is just his like gopher boy.
He really is. Like I'm surprised he didn't intubate the musician.
Yeah, no kidding. So as has been pointed out, they put him on some medications and things like that before they were like pulled off of him, restrained from him, and because he thought maybe it was Wegener's granulomas, which is another autoimmune disease, which I mean could kind of fit, I guess, but so they put him on I believe it was steroids. They put him on steroids for that, and they put him on a few other things. So they go in there. They're gonna pull the plug. They pull the plug, and he doesn't die. He's he thinks he's gonna die and everything, but he's he's holding his own. He's able to breathe on his own, and they're not sure exactly what's going on. And House goes to leave, and he touches the guy's leg for whatever reason. It's so out of character. I almost think maybe it's like a test, like a Hail Mary that he doesn't want to admit. That like maybe something.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So the guy says to him, "Hey, you touched my leg. I can feel it." So something they put him on is helping reverse his him being paralyzed. I guess we never really mentioned that, although we did say he had Lou Gehrig's disease. It's clear he's in a wheelchair at the beginning because he's been paralyzed from the waist down. Oh wait, actually this happens after they do the embolectomy. That's right. So he can't move his arm after they take him out. They take him off the life support and everything, and he lives, but he can't move his right arm. They think that indicates that it's the ALS progressing, but House suggests that maybe the two aren't connected, and Cameron points out that he could have had a stroke while he was being intubated because blood clots are common amongst patients that are immobile, and it can happen with the IVIG. So they don't want to do the medication because the medication can hurt the lungs, and John Henry Giles is all about playing this, his instrument, and if he can't do it, then he doesn't want to live anyway. So Foreman suggests that maybe they could do an embolectomy where they take the embolism right out of the brain, and either it works and he could get function of his arm back, or it'll kill him, which as Foreman points out, in his mind is a win-win.
Yeah, because he and House have a really interesting conversation about he basically points out, he realizes at a certain point that House really just loves medicine more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how he feels about music. He feels that if his lungs are collapsing and he won't be able to play the trumpet, or I think it's a trumpet anymore, then he'd rather be dead than not be able.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, he points out to says to House, he like he shows a lot of ability to psychoanalyze, observe, and everything. People where he talks about the no wedding ring on your finger and his obsessive nature and all this stuff. And he's like, yeah, it's like you got one thing. He's like, you know what, you don't risk losing your career, going to jail to save the life of someone that doesn't want to be saved, unless you don't have anything else in your life. And he's like, I know what it's like because same way with me for music. And he's like, being that way makes us the best. It makes us abnormal from everyone else, and we lose out on all the other things that life has to offer, like a wife, like a family, things like that. Um,
Yeah.
and he's like, so you take this one thing away from me, I don't care, basically.
Right.
So yeah, they do the embolectomy. It works. His arm, is healed, and like I said, House touches his leg, and um, it's it turns out that something that they've done has started making him better. Marty thinks that it's his treatment, the experimental treatment that he's been on for ALS, that it's somehow reversing the ALS, which would be uh mind-boggling if that was actually happening. And House, of course, thinks that it's his stuff because that's the timing of that makes sense.
Because the show's not called Marty MD.
Right, exactly. So he says, let's take him off everything, and he'll get worse again, and then we'll start introducing things one at a time, and to figure out what it is, what we were putting him on that's making him better, and then that can help us figure out what he actually has. So
Right.
he's
And this whole I'm sorry,
no
this whole
good.
time House and Marty are kind of competing over Foreman. He offers
Yes.
Foreman a job with him because he's Foreman is probably the best med student in the entire nation. He's like on the top team with like the top doctor, and he's
Hmm.
the best person on the team by far.
Oh yeah, it's not even close.
Yeah, Foreman could just like replace like House, and no one would blink an eye.
Yeah, the other two. I mean, Cameron. Eventually, we find out Cameron's a decent doctor at least, but they both look completely useless next to Foreman.
Right.
So he offers him a job, and he comes in. Foreman comes in and says, "Yeah, he offered me a job." And Cameron points out, she's like, "You already have the most prestigious fellowship in the country." And he goes, "It's not a fellowship; it's a partnership." So, like a partner in his medical practice,
Right.
3 times the salary with a company car and all this shit. And they're
In
like,
nice warm California.
yeah, and they're like, "Well, why didn't you take it?" And he's like, "Oh, I made a commitment here, and everything." And
I kind of feel like he bets to himself that if Marty's treatment wins,
mhm.
then he'll go with him because to him to his eyes these are the two best doctors he knows.
Yeah, exactly. And they both point out, they give a little bit more about their character here, because he says, "Oh, you wouldn't, you'd take it," and Chase says, "I don't need the money," because he comes from a rich family. We learn more about that later, but so he comes from a rich family, doesn't need the money at all. And Cameron says, "I'm not like you. I don't hate House," which we explore that a little bit more too later. But so he's thinking about it, and like I said, I think you're right, because House says to him later, he says, "Which do you think he's a better doctor than me?" And Foreman's like, "What is this about your ego?" And he goes, "No. If you think he's a better doctor, then you should go with him. If you don't, then you should stay here." Basically, House says exactly kind of what you were saying. Like, whoever's right, that's where you should stay, and that is what Foreman ultimately wants, is to be with the better doctor.
Yeah, and that's kind of a nice touch for House because you wouldn't think he would care, but I think I really feel he genuinely
Oh
cares
yeah.
about Foreman, and because he really likes him because he is like a younger less acerbic version of himself.
Yep. Absolutely.
And so he's like, he wants him to do well, but he obviously still thinks he's in the right. And Again, this is House MD, not Marty MD, so he, of course, is correct.
So he's talking. House is talking with Wilson later, and Marty comes in and says, um, he says, "Hey, I need to know what medications you had John on," and
Yeah, yeah, they were sneakily like removing them. They weren't telling Marty about this,
right.
but he was clever enough again to kind of figure it out himself.
So he's like, he says something about House or about Foreman, I mean, and he's like, how'd you know it? That I offered him a job, and he goes, "You're a well-meaning twit, but you're not an idiot," and basically saying like you can see the talent that Foreman has, so of course you'd want him. Um, and House finally figures out. He's like, you're not an idiot. You need to know what we had him on because he's gotten worse, and he has gotten worse. So they put him on I believe they put him on the steroids first again, and things have started to change. So he says, go ahead and put him in an MRI, get another MRI because something's obviously different. So they give him an MRI and they find what is it, an AVM, um, and that's like a tumor basically that's pushing on the spine, and that's causing the
Paralysis.
paralysis, right? And if they
Isn't
remove
it, isn't
that,
that like a yeah? Is it like a malformation? Is that what that is, or is it like you said? Is it like a abnormal growth?
well, it's so AVM stands for arteriovenous malformation. You basically it's it usually occurs in the brain or the spinal cord, but it's a web like a mass of arteries and veins that are connected to like fistulas. So it's a bit like a tumor, but it's basically a tumor that's made up of blood vessels all kind of
Ah,
wrapped around each other. Um,
yikes!
yeah. So if they remove it, obviously he'll be able to walk again. That's the theory anyway. And they didn't see it before. Marty's scans didn't find it. They didn't know why, but they figure out. Well, we gave him steroids, which steroids are anti-inflammatory medications. So it reduced the inflammation that the AVM was causing around his spinal cord, which allowed them to see it because the AVM was hiding in its own swelling, which is a pretty that can happen. I mean, it's definitely within the realm of possibility. It's a fun little thing to explain why it wasn't noticed before, because on a normal
Sure,
scan usually this would be caught right away.
sure.
But
Yeah, they do the surgery. He
mhm.
doesn't die. They kind of like show a time elapse here. Like they
Yeah.
show like him like getting physical therapy. They don't say how long it is. I'm sure it's a while.
Oh yeah, it would have to be, yeah.
Then he and House are walking out both on canes. And then John Henry goes, I bet you were kind of like an asshole before you like hurt your leg. And he's like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, he sees him taking some pills too, and he says, "Hey, how many of those pills you taking every day?" And House says, "This is a really good scene between the two of them too." House says, "I'm in pain," and he kind of looks at me and he goes, "Aren't we all?" Kind of basically saying like, "Yeah, your problem might not be the leg as much as it is everything else."
great.
And he gives him his trumpet and says, "Here, I want you to have this. You can sell it if you want to, but I just don't play it."
Right.
And then he walks off, and that's basically the end of the episode. But yeah, I like this one quite a bit. I think the guy, I can't remember his name anymore, Stenek, that plays John Henry Giles. I think he's very good with Hugh Laurie, with Hugh Laurie's house. I think they're good together, kind of going back and forth. He's also a real strong personality, and I like the interplay between the two of them.
Yeah, I like them both. There's a lot of good, fun acting in this one. Good episode. I liked it.
Yeah, definitely. It's again another kind of standard episode. We're getting close to a like a multi a multi arc or I think almost the rest of the season arc coming up pretty soon. I can't remember exactly what episode it is, but where we have a new character that's going to be coming in. So I'm kind of excited about that. But this is the show has definitely hit its stride. It's kind of running on all cylinders now, and things are going to get shaken up pretty soon. So that will be interesting.
Nice.
But yeah, that is our episode for the week. As always, tell a friend if you enjoy the episodes, and if you like House, you should like this. I would think.
Yeah, right.
But we will see you next time. Bye.
See you next time.